In a remote village, nestled between two misty mountains, the Whispering Woods stood as an ancient testament to the unknown. For generations, villagers avoided the forest after sundown, whispering tales of eerie voices and shadowy figures that roamed under the cover of darkness. Few dared to venture in, and those who did often returned with haunted eyes or never came back at all. Among the villagers, there was a young woman named Eliza. She was brave, curious, and skeptical of the old superstitions. Her family had lived in the village for centuries, and while they adhered to the customs, Eliza always felt a pull towards the mysterious woods. The stories intrigued her more than they scared her, and she often found herself standing at the edge of the forest, wondering what truths lay hidden within. One autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to twinkle, Eliza decided to uncover the secrets of the Whispering Woods. Armed with a lantern, a sturdy stick, and her grandmother's old compass, she stepped into the forest, determined to return with proof that the tales were nothing more than myths. The woods were dense, with gnarled trees that twisted and turned like ancient guardians. The air was cool, carrying a faint scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Eliza followed a narrow path, her lantern casting long shadows that danced eerily around her. As she ventured deeper, the familiar sounds of the village faded away, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the distant hoots of owls. Eliza walked for what felt like hours, the path winding deeper into the heart of the forest. Just as she began to doubt her decision, she stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood an ancient stone well, covered in moss and vines. The well seemed out of place, as if it had been there long before the forest itself. Intrigued, Eliza approached it, peering over the edge into the inky blackness below. A sudden gust of wind blew through the clearing, extinguishing her lantern. Eliza cursed under her breath, fumbling to relight it. As she did, she heard a faint whispering sound, barely audible but unmistakable. She froze, straining to hear. The whispers grew louder, more distinct, and she realized they were coming from the well. Her heart pounded as she leaned closer, trying to make out the words. The whispers were incoherent, a chorus of voices speaking in a language she couldn't understand. Fear gnawed at her resolve, but curiosity pushed her to lower the lantern into the well. The light illuminated the damp stones, revealing strange symbols etched into the walls. Suddenly, a cold hand grasped her wrist. Eliza screamed, dropping the lantern into the well. She yanked her hand free and stumbled back, tripping over a root and falling to the ground. Her heart raced as she scrambled to her feet, her eyes darting around the clearing. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, and she realized they were all around her, echoing through the trees. Panic set in as Eliza ran back the way she came, the darkness closing in around her. The forest seemed alive, branches reaching out to snag her clothes, roots tripping her at every step. She could still hear the whispers, now accompanied by the sound of footsteps. Someone, or something, was following her. Eliza's mind raced with thoughts of the stories she'd heard. The ghosts of the Whispering Woods, spirits of those who had ventured in and never returned. She pushed herself harder, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her legs burning with the effort. Just as she thought she couldn't go any further, she saw the faint glow of the village lights through the trees. With a final burst of energy, Eliza broke through the tree line and collapsed onto the village road. The whispers ceased abruptly, leaving her in stunned silence. Villagers rushed to her side, their faces pale with worry and fear. They helped her to her feet, asking what had happened, but Eliza could only shake her head, unable to find the words. That night, Eliza lay in bed, her mind racing with what she'd experienced. She knew the whispers were real, that something sinister lurked in the forest. Determined to find answers, she decided to return to the well, this time with a plan and the right equipment. The next day, Eliza gathered supplies, rope, a stronger lantern, and her grandfather's old journal filled with sketches and notes about the forest. She enlisted the help of her closest friend, Thomas, a skilled woodsman who had always believed in the old stories. Together, they set out just before dusk, hoping to reach the well before nightfall. As they ventured deeper into the forest, Eliza recounted her previous encounter. Thomas listened intently, his usually jovial demeanor replaced by a somber seriousness. He had always suspected there was more to the Whispering Woods than mere superstition, and Eliza's experience confirmed his fears. They reached the clearing just as the last light of day faded. The well stood silently, its dark mouth seeming to swallow the surrounding light. Eliza and Thomas approached cautiously, lanterns held high. They tied the rope securely around a sturdy tree and lowered the other end into the well. Thomas volunteered to go down first, his strength and experience making him the better choice. Eliza watched anxiously as Thomas descended into the darkness. The rope creaked under his weight, and the lantern light flickered ominously. After what felt like an eternity, Thomas called up, his voice echoing slightly. "I found something. Symbols, like you said. And bones." A chill ran down Eliza's spine. She lowered another lantern to Thomas, who examined the etchings and the remains more closely. He described them as ancient, possibly predating the village itself. The bones were human, scattered at the bottom of the well, mingled with fragments of old clothing and personal items. Suddenly, the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. Thomas's voice wavered as he called up to Eliza. "Something's happening. The symbols are glowing." Eliza's heart pounded as she strained to see into the well. A pale, eerie light emanated from the depths, casting an unnatural glow on Thomas's face. His expression was a mix of fear and awe. "Eliza, we need to leave. Now!" As Thomas began to climb back up, the ground around the well trembled. Eliza's lantern flickered wildly, casting erratic shadows. She gripped the rope, helping Thomas as he scrambled to the top. The whispers grew deafening, a cacophony of voices overlapping and echoing through the clearing. Just as Thomas reached the edge, a ghostly hand shot out from the well, grasping his ankle. He screamed, kicking frantically to free himself. Eliza grabbed his arms, pulling with all her strength. The hand was cold, its grip unyielding. Desperation gave Eliza strength, and with a final, mighty heave, she managed to pull Thomas free. The ghostly hand retreated, and the whispers ceased abruptly, leaving the forest in eerie silence. They fled the clearing, the forest seeming to close in around them as they ran. The journey back to the village was a blur of frantic footsteps and terrified glances over their shoulders. When they finally emerged from the woods, the villagers were waiting, drawn by the commotion. Eliza and Thomas recounted their harrowing experience, showing the sketches and notes from her grandfather's journal. The village elders listened, their faces grim. They revealed that the well was an ancient burial site, cursed by a powerful sorcerer centuries ago. The spirits of those buried there were bound to the forest, forever whispering their torment to anyone who dared to listen. Determined to break the curse, Eliza and Thomas sought the help of a reclusive hermit who lived on the outskirts of the village. The hermit was rumored to possess ancient knowledge and powerful magic. When they arrived at his hut, the old man greeted them with a knowing look, as if he had been expecting them. He explained that the curse could only be lifted by performing a ritual at the well under the light of the full moon. The ritual required rare herbs, sacred symbols, and the blood of a willing sacrifice. Eliza and Thomas agreed to do whatever it took to free the spirits and end the haunting whispers. The night of the full moon arrived, casting a silver glow over the forest. Eliza, Thomas, and the hermit made their way to the well, carrying the necessary items for the ritual. The air was thick with anticipation and fear. They set up a makeshift altar near the well, arranging the herbs and drawing the sacred symbols on the ground. As the moon reached its zenith, the hermit began to chant in a language neither Eliza nor Thomas understood. The symbols glowed faintly, and the air grew colder. Eliza felt a prickling sensation on her skin as if 1,000 eyes were watching her. The whispers returned, louder and more frenzied than ever before. The hermit motioned for Eliza to step forward. He handed her a ceremonial dagger, its blade glinting in the moonlight. She hesitated, her hand trembling. Thomas squeezed her shoulder reassuringly, giving her the strength she needed. With a deep breath, Eliza made a shallow cut on her palm, letting a few drops of blood fall onto the altar. The effect was immediate. The whispers turned into anguished cries, and the ground shook violently. The symbols flared with a blinding light, and a column of spectral energy erupted from the well, reaching towards the moon. Eliza and Thomas watched in awe and terror as ghostly figures emerged from the light, their faces twisted in pain and sorrow. The hermit's chanting grew louder, his voice rising above the cacophony. The ghostly figures began to dissipate, their forms dissolving into the night air. The cries faded, replaced by a profound silence. As the last spirit vanished, the column of light disappeared, and the forest was plunged into darkness once more. Eliza and Thomas collapsed to the ground, exhausted and overwhelmed. The hermit approached them, his face lined with weariness. "The curse is broken," he said softly. "The spirits are free." The journey back to the village was somber, the weight of what they had witnessed heavy on their shoulders. The villagers greeted them with a mix of relief and reverence, grateful for their bravery. The whispering woods were silent, the curse lifted, and the ancient well now just a relic of a dark past. Eliza and Thomas became local legends, their story passed down through generations as a reminder of the power of courage and sacrifice. The forest, once feared, became a place of quiet reflection, its secrets finally at peace. The whispers were gone, but the memory of that night would forever haunt those who dared to remember.